Hello, good afternoon, everybody. The time is 6 o'clock, and we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. At this moment, let's go ahead and do our invocation and our Pledge of Allegiance. Gabby, would you like to lead us on the invocation, please?
Heavenly Father, we ask you for your blessings today. We ask you to bless this meeting, all the people that are coming to present, and all of us that are here to serve our community. Bless our Los Fresnos and for us to give the best knowledge that we have for a better of Los Fresnos. In your name we pray. Amen.
At this time, we don't have any visitors' remarks. We'll go ahead and proceed on the action items. We have 4 action items today. The first one is consideration and action to approve the audit report for 2020-2021 fiscal year. Mark, at this time, is there anything that will go with the presentation?
No, we'll let, my one blank. We'll let Quentin present the information.
That button. Hello. There you go. Easy for an Aggie, right? Okay. My name's Quentin Anderson. I'm with Carr, Riggs & Ingram, and we worked together with your finance department to prepare this annual financial report. And so I'm going to highlight some of the information within that report for you and kind of give you a quick overview of the city's finances. I would take you, I notice on your agenda tonight, the second item is a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. So jump to page 7 in your bound report. And so you have submitted your report for review and critique by the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, and they reviewed your report and determined that you met the criteria for excellence in financial reporting. And you've been doing that for several years now. Made an important process for you in terms of financial reporting. So I don't want to steal the thunder of your second presentation, but you were awarded that, and you historically put that within your report to distinguish the fact that you do have a comprehensive report. So let's go to page 11, the Independent Auditor's Report. You engaged us to audit the financial statements of all of your activities, governmental activities, business type activities, and your component unit, which is a development corporation. And we've worked with your finance personnel to gather the evidence that we needed to do that. On page 13, we rendered our opinion that your financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. And so that would be an unmodified report, which you'd be anticipating. And so there's a lot of additional information in your report because you're a local government. And so we're required to comply with government auditing standards and issue some various supplementary information. And then also because you were the recipient this past year of some grant awards that pushed you over the threshold for single audit testing, we also issued some reports on compliance with various grant program requirements. And so those reports are included in the back of this bound report, and I'll summarize those for you when we get there. Go to page 17. Page 17 is a narrative and graphical presentation of your report called Management's Discussion and Analysis, and finance has put together some highlights, some recaps of the city's financial condition and financial position. So the next several pages are a brief summary of the detailed financial statements. I'm going to tell you that the statements show that at the end of the fiscal period, your assets exceeded liabilities by $33 million. And it's always good to be able to say assets exceed liabilities, right? You own more than you owe. So look at page 20, you can see that better. And so it says that assets exceeded liabilities by $33,191,000. You see that as net position in the total column for 2021. The fifth column, it's a combination of governmental activities and business type activities, and it'll show that your overall assets were about 56 million, liabilities around 23 million, and net position, the difference between the two, 33 million. A lot of that, of course, it doesn't mean you have $33 million in the bank ready to spend it, because you've spent about $30 million, and you see that $30,221,000 on capital assets, on buildings and infrastructure and improvement. So the unrestricted portion of your net position was about $2.3 million. And the prior year, that was about $1.2 million. So it has improved. Net position has grown, I want to say, by about $1.7 million. Look at page 22. You'll see a recap of revenues and expenses in your governmental activities. And when I talk about that, that's the general government, things like public safety and highways and streets. And then business type activities, that's your water and sewer services. That's a type of activity where you charge a customer for a service. That's why it's called a business type activity. But the combination of the two show that your overall revenues were about $10 million, and your expenses were $8.2 million, and you had a surplus in combination of $1,798,000, causing your fund balance to increase from 31 million to 33 million that we saw on the previous page. Now there's some colorful charts, and if you squint really hard, you can see some of the index that tells you what each of those things represent. But in terms of revenues, you know, the bulk of your revenue comes from for governmental activities, comes from property taxes, about 26%, for general purposes, and 23% for debt service purposes. And you have franchise fees and sales tax revenues. The sales tax revenue were nearly 34%. Interesting to see on page 22, if we look at property taxes, they've increased $2,287,000 compared to $2.1 million. And that's not from a rate increase, but from property value increases. And your sales tax revenue also increased from $1,352,000 to $1,571,000. So it's, you know, good improvement. And I think what it reflects to me is life's coming back to normal, right? We went through some difficult times, and we're starting to get back to normal. Also, I think it's interesting to note on page 23, in terms of the biggest bar of expenditures, right? Public safety. And you can see that on page 22, about $2.2 million. That's what governments are, you know, partially in the business of doing, right? Public safety. So that's your biggest expenditure category. And it wasn't in the prior year with about $2.1 million. So on page 25, when we look at your business type activities, again, that's water and sewer services, and those revenues are fairly significant. $1.5 million in water services, 1.6 in sewer services, and you know, somewhat comparable to prior year revenue. So I also want to take you to page 27, where you can see a recap of your capital assets. When I talked about on your net position, you having a significant amount invested in capital assets, here's a recap of governmental activities and business type activities, and how much money you have invested historically in various things, in land and construction in progress and buildings and improvements and things of that nature. There's also a nice recap at the bottom of page 27 of the major projects that were underway. And you had construction on Henderson Road, and the hike and bike trail was being finished up. There's a water treatment plant, nature park, and some drainage projects. And you're in the process now of spending some of the funds, the revenue bonds you got from the drinking water and clean water state revolving funds. There's some additions to long-term debt. You see that on page 28. There's an increase in the business type activities when long-term debt was $7.1 million. It's grown to 11.8, and about a $4 million increase. And that's because of the money you have for your projects that were underway, just beginning to be underway at the end of this fiscal period, and probably well underway underway now, so. That management's discussion and analysis, I think, does a good job summarizing detailed financial statements. After that are the detailed financial statements. And so I think the MD&A provides a good overview. After that is beginning at page 32, kind of some fund level financial statements. The one I'd focus on mostly is your general fund on page 32. And you'll see that your general fund balance was $2,399,000 at the end of the audit period. And what that represents, I believe, Mark may tell me differently, I think that's about half a year's worth of expenditures in the general fund. So yeah, it kind of represents fairly good reserves. Go back to page 81, we'll see it better. There's a comparative schedule for your general fund, which is your primary budgeted fund, right? And you'll see that you had, again, the $2,399,000. Last year, that was $1,681,000. So the general fund, on page 81, I'm sorry, there's a comparative schedule, comparative balance sheet for the general fund. And so the general fund balance has grown, I would say, by about $700,000. And you can see how on page 82. Okay, page 82 shows your revenues. Again, there was an increase in property tax revenues from property value increases. There's an increase in non-property tax revenues. That's a super secret way of saying sales tax, right? So, and maybe some franchise fees, but overall your revenues increased from $4.3 million to $5.1 million. And then your expenditures were $4.5 million, up about $400,000. But overall, your fund balance has increased by $717,000. And when you compare $2.3 million in fund balance to the $4,597,000 in expenditures, that's where I get the analysis that it's about a half a year's worth of expenditure. So those are the primary statements. There's a lot of notes to the financial statements that talk about various aspects of financial reporting.
Excuse me, on page 82.
Yes, sir.
Interest and investment income,
Yes.
2020 was at 12,000. 2021 was 2497. Where is that interest and investment income generated from, or where does that figure come from?
Yeah, so you come back to page 81 and you'll see, cash and cash equivalent balances. And so you've got some, modest is the wrong word, but kind of somewhat disgusting interest rates on your cash balances, unfortunately. So just generating a little bit of interest income, whereas in the past it might have been a bigger source of income, but that's coming from idle cash balances that you're investing at any
Is
point in
that
time.
those like CDs or stuff
Yeah,
like that?
yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so you use investment pools, which is a place to put your funds that keep it liquid and keep it accessible.
Okay, because the interest rates are pretty general between 2020 and 2021, and the amount of
Yeah.
interest there is pretty substantial. So just wondering how it went from 12 to 2 and like a money fund or something like that. Just a question,
Yes, sir.
curiosity.
Right. I'm trying to look to, so you're using local government investment pools in order to invest your liquid funds, and they're just not, at this point in time, generating a high amount of interest, unfortunately.
We'll look to see exactly where that came from and what funds created the additional from last year versus
Yeah,
this year.
and the total number at the bottom is incredible, and it looks good. I'm just kind of curious because interest rates have not really changed from 2020 to 2021.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering what caused the discrepancy from 12 to 10. I would think that 2021 would be right in line with 2020, but I mean, we're not talking about a big amount, just kind of curious.
Right, that's true, so.
It's probably just, we had other cash that we had access to that went into projects that we expended through the year. I don't know that for a fact, but That's probably what it was.
Sorry about that. Finance can give you a recap of what generated that interest income. But page 71, if you looked at it quickly, you know, I know $2,400 isn't a lot of money, but you didn't anticipate a whole lot of interest when you look at your budget, about $6,000 when you were kind of estimating what you might get in there. So, but I know you have detail where the prior year number is coming from is really what the commission's question is, right? Yeah. Yeah.
We can't hear you.
He said the interest rate went down quite a bit from 2020 to 2021, and that was a big part of the differential.
And that interest rate is coming from where? And what is that? What's the investment pool?
It's where we invest all the monies that we have.
So like,
That we can use for the overall operations.
okay, because normally, like I mentioned, in banking, interest rates kind of remain the same, and there's the $10,000 difference. I just don't see that the interest rate would change that dramatically. It's like going from 1% to 0.4, so. Oh, wow. So does that mean maybe you took it out of his CD? Because he said liquid funds, and I'm figuring, okay. Okay. Just, thank you.
Any more questions, Mr.
Council,
Flores?
feel free to ask questions as you need.
I do want to jump back to the compliance section, but certainly interject with questions if you have them. So I'm going to take you back to where we tested your federal grant awards. And so there's a report on page 131 that has a report on controls over financial reporting and compliance. And there's an additional report on page 135 that has a report on compliance for each major program and internal controls over compliance as well. Both of those, that report is because you exceeded $750,000 in federal grant awards. And page 139 will summarize both of those reports, which have a lot of technical information in them. But page 139 is a summary of those reports, and we did not. Our independent auditor's report was unmodified. That's what I pointed out to you. But we didn't identify any material weaknesses, and no significant deficiencies were noted. No non-compliance was noted as well. So all of this whole page 139 reflects favorably on the city and the administration of the grant awards that you had during the year. And these awards will be larger in the current period for a couple of reasons. Let me take you to, you have to squint on this page 142. 142 is a recap of your various federal awards, and the two more significant awards was the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund at $193,000. Well, that's about a $3 million loan, right, which you're in the process of spending, and so that award will be bigger in the fiscal year that you're in now because you're actually incurring expenditures and have projects. And then the Coronavirus Relief Fund had $283,000 in expenditures. But what's not on here, that will be on here most likely in the new fiscal period, is the ARPA funds you received. You received $970,000 but hadn't expended any. This is a recap of expenditures. You'll be receiving a second tranche of that fairly soon, maybe before August, another $970,000. And so those are federal awards, and those will drive additional compliance testing for 2022. So that's the end of the report. Again, the opinion on the financials was unmodified, and that, and 139 summarizes the fact that you guys did a good job with compliance and controls, and so, but we didn't have any material concerns from control perspective or compliance to report to you. So, and we saw also at the front of the report, you did receive certificate of achievement for the prior year financial statement, and you'll be submitting the current one to the GFOA for review and critique as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, council, is there any questions, comments, or a motion? Okay, motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll go ahead and second that motion.
At this time, motion has been made and seconded. With that said, all those in favor of this signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
And all those who oppose do the same. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to action item number 2, the presentation of Certificate of Achievement for Excellence Financial Reporting. I believe that that was covered in our presentation. Any questions or comments or a motion to be made?
Just a comment that, you know, the comments I put in the package, it's a additional reporting that's done by the finance staff, and more transparency and more information, and it's great that Pablo and his staff continue to do that. We've done that now for 13 years, and it's just a good thing to continue, and thanks to Pablo, the finance staff, department heads. You know, when I say it takes everybody, it really does. You know, from the days when we talk about budget to all the way through people making just simple purchases and following the procedures and doing that all the way through the year and then up to an audit. So it's a great job for everybody.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you for the finance department. I know that compliance is something that we hold dearly, and being able to have this award from 2008 and on is an incredible achievement. You have to be very picky and meticulous and make sure everything is correct. So great job. Congratulations. At this time, any motion to be made or any other questions from any of the board?
It's just a presentation, so you don't have.
Oh, that's right. It doesn't give you the action. So no action at this time. At this time, moving on to a action. Consideration and action, reject all bids received for the 2021 street improvement project. Mark, any elaboration on this particular item?
Just that we received 2 bids, but one of them was late, so we couldn't accept it. Bid was too high, and so we want to just reject them all and rebid it. I also made some comments in further analysis. There's about 3 of those streets that we'll talk about in the next item. Has water and not water, but sewer lines. That part of that other project that we've been talking about is to replace those sewer lines that could be leaking, and also the manholes that were made back in the 50s and 60s out of brick, and they need to be replaced. And so it's good that we're doing this. We'll go back and look at those items and use the ARPA money to fix those, which helps our problems on, what do you call it, water, rainwater getting into our sewer system because of those leaks, which then cause backups, which we talked about. So, so twofold, to reject those. Number one, to get the other piece in part of our budget to do those at the same time, and number one, it was too high.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we reject all the bids received for the 2021 street improvement project.
I second that motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. At this time, all those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye. And all those who oppose do the same. Motion carries. Moving on to action item number 4, consideration and action to approve an amendment to the agreement for engineering services for the 2021 street improvement project to include sewer engineering services. Mark?
Yes, sir. This is what I was talking about is that they're already doing the surveying and everything for the streets to do those and the engineering for that. To add all of those sewer lines and the manholes and everything, it'll be an additional $25,000. That's very inexpensive. Since they've already got a lot of the data, doesn't have to, we don't have to do double work. And so they'll do that, do the plan, add that to the plans. And so we'll have our street project along with the sewer line replacement and the manhole replacement. We have the funds for the streets. This funds will be those that you set aside for the ARPA funds. And so we'll be able to get those done. Should have thought about that before we even bid it out the first time, but overlooked it because you don't want to tear up, put a new street in and then say, we got a sewer problem there. So doing it the right way. Take us a while, but we did it the right way, and they'll be able to have this ready no later than, I think, June, but that way we can get going on maybe July at the latest to get the street project going.
Any questions or comments from the council or any motions to be made?
I move that we approve the amendment to the engineering services for the 2021 street improvement project to include sewer engineering services.
I'll second.
Great, motion has been made and seconded. At this time, all those in favor signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
Aye.
All those who oppose do the same. Motion carries.
Might mention real quick, it does have the timeline in there so you can see on page 17 of when the final design, bidding, bid opening, and so.
Thank you, Mark, for
Thank
pointing
you.
that out. Appreciate that. And at this time, at 6:28, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you and have a great day.